for the federal government to take over law enforcement in Washington, D.C. A few other odds and ends, but those are our main stories. We're also going to talk quite a bit about California tonight because we have with us incredible guests. Couldn't be more honored and delighted to have Karen Skelton, a Democratic strategist who's worked for many of the top figures in the Democratic Party over many years, and Rob Stutzman, Republican consultant, who's worked for a lot of great Republicans, and George Skelton, who I mentioned a little bit before. Truly, I was thinking about this today while I was running. If I were to make a list of the top 5 political columnists in the last 50 years, George Skelton would be on the list. Really, and he'd be closer to the top than the bottom. There's very few people in modern American history whose capacity to write about American politics over a long period of time as a columnist is even close to George Skelton. So really honored to have all 3 of them here. They'll be here in a moment. What I'm going to do is tee up the Trump sound on Putin because he talked quite a bit about it. And I'm hoping in the 2 minutes during which we play Sam's sound bites 1, 2, and 3, I'm going to figure out how to get my audio back so I can actually have a conversation with our guests and with you. So please play 1, 2, and 3 in order.
I'm going in to speak to Vladimir Putin, and I'm going to be telling him, you got to end this war. You got to end it. And he wasn't going to mess with me. This war would have never happened. You know, we had a discussion about it one time, and we never had that discussion again. Would have never happened. I'm going to meet with him. We're going to see what the parameters are. I'm then going to call up President Zelensky and the European leaders right after the meeting, yeah. And I'm going to tell them what kind of a deal. I'm not going to make a deal. It's not up to me to make a deal. I think a deal should be made for both. I think Russia has to get back into building their country. It's a massive country. I think they have 11 time zones, if you can believe it. It's a massive, it's by far, from the standpoint of land, it's by far the largest. They have tremendous potential in Russia to do well. They're not doing well. Their economy is not doing well right now because it's been very well disturbed by this. It doesn't help when the President of the United States tells their largest or second largest oil buyer that we're putting a 50% tariff on you if you buy oil from Russia. That was a big blow. And then they say, gee, he wasn't so tough. Nobody else would have done that. And I haven't stopped there. I mean, look, I was all set to do things far bigger than that, but I got a call that they'd like to meet, and I'm going to see what they want to meet about. I'd like to see a ceasefire. I'd like to see the best deal that could be made for both parties. You know, it takes 2 to tango, right? Well, we're going to have a meeting with Vladimir Putin, and at the end of that meeting, probably in the first 2 minutes, I'll know exactly whether or not a deal can be made. How will you know that? Because that's what I do. I make deals.
All right, interesting. 2 things. One is, I heard so much commentary on cable today about all the risks involved here and President Trump's longtime positive words about Putin. By the way, I have my audio in case you're wondering. You know, of course, there are risks involved, and you heard the president getting questions about some of them, but the alternative was not great. You know, we had several years during the Biden administration where they didn't seem to have a plan to end the war effectively, and the president's efforts here, a lot of risk, but I keep asking the question, what's the alternative? And number 2, there's going to be a lot of communication between the president and the Europeans about people complaining about my audio. Let's see what I can do about that. About what's going to happen with here. How about
audio is good.
Going to be trying to figure out how to go into the meeting. So we'll see. All right. I want to polymarket 2 things from about Ukraine. This is from our partners at Polymarket who have been asking questions about Russia, Ukraine. Here's 3B, please. Will there be a Russia-Ukraine official ceasefire agreement in 2025? Polymarket traders are putting a 40% odds that there'll be a ceasefire agreement this year. That's up 20% in the last week. Obviously, moved up pretty substantially in the wake of the announcement of the Friday meeting, but still only 40%. And then 3C, will Ukraine agree to cede territory to Russia? Polymarket traders putting 23% odd on Ukraine agreeing to cede territory. That's up 11% in the last week, but still relatively low if you think about the fact that it appears that both President Trump and Putin, as well as even Lindsey Graham, have suggested that Ukraine's going to have to cede territory in order to make this deal. So two interesting polymarkets there. All right. What I want to do now is bring in our guests and talk to them about Russia and Ukraine. And then we'll talk a little bit also about the president's announcement today about the National Guard in D.C. And then we're going to talk some California and your questions. So again, if you want to be in on the conversation, please raise your hand. And let's bring our guests in. And I'm going to ask my colleagues to do that because, as you know, I'm having a world of technical difficulties today. So if you could bring in the Skelton family and Rob, that'd be awesome. All right, we'll start with Karen since she's here first. Karen Skelton, thank you for waiting. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Tell people who don't know, the few on here who don't know, what kind of Democratic politicians have you worked for? Who are some of them?
I have worked for those who have been indicted, impeached.
Can you all hear Karen Skelton?
Yes.
Yes, interesting. All right, keep talking, Karen.
I said I've worked for people who have been impeached, indicted, imprisoned, and made us proud. I've worked for many Democrats, proud to have done it.
All right, she's worked for Clinton and Gore. I'll say that. Rob Stutzman, welcome, Republican. Who have you worked for?
Oh, governor named Schwarzenegger in California, Mitt Romney, presidential campaigns, various and sundry members of Congress, Meg Whitman when she ran for governor of California. So it goes on and on.
Yeah. And George Skelton, like Kamala Harris, has only worked for the people. He's not worked for any politicians. Mr. Skelton, very honored to have you here. Do you accept guilty as charged? You're one of the 5 top political columnists of the last 50 years.
No, I don't.
No? Name 5 better than you.
Gross exaggeration.
Name 5 better. Go ahead. I dare you.
Start with Dave Roeder, I suppose.
Okay. Karen, he's never going to get to 5.
I'm not going to name the top 5. No.
Yeah. You know why you're not? Because you know you're in it. Broder's pretty good. I'll concede that. Whitcover.
Bill Sapphire.
Okay. That's still only 3. Skelton.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Question.
George, let's start with you. And again, so grateful to all 3 of you for joining. How do you see this summit? Do you think this is a good idea, bad idea? What are you sort of interested in regarding Friday?
Oh, I agree with you. It doesn't hurt to talk. I mean, it's always good when you're talking, not shooting. But I don't have much confidence in it because I think really Trump's main goal in life is to get attention, and that's what he's doing right now.
Karen?
I really don't think that Putin gives a damn about what Trump thinks or about sanctions or numbers of his troops who are killed or anything like that. I don't have much confidence in it, but I think it's good to talk.
Would you say you're bullish or bearish on a possible deal?
Bearish.
Karen.
Yeah, I mean, I don't always agree with my dad, but I agree with him on this. I think it's a very expensive decoy, just like the insurrection in LA was, and just like the new insurrection in Washington, D.C. is. I think that without having Zelensky there, it just undercuts any seriousness about a true solution, which we need. And yeah, that's basically what I think.
Rob, if you were hired to do the optics for this summit, what would that look like?
I wouldn't allow there to be many optics. I don't think it does Trump any good to be seen hanging out with Putin when it appears Putin's continuing to play him. If Trump wants to look strong on this, I think he should walk in solemn, looking strong. And if he doesn't have anything to announce, he should walk out and actually be tough on Putin, unlike what we remember so well from Helsinki in that first term.
You all have seen so many summits over the years, very high stakes. President Reagan from California obviously had some extraordinary summits with Soviet leaders. This is kind of a more of a subjective question, but the stakes for this are quite high, right? I mean, Europe is at stake, and one of the most serious, arguably the most serious conflict since World War II. Does this feel big to you, or is the age we're in such that it doesn't feel as big as it did, for instance, during the Cold War? George.
Well, I think this is a big deal. Yeah, obviously. This war's been going on for 3 years. At some point, it's going to stop, and probably Putin's going to take over a good share of Ukraine. But I don't see this happening in the next week or two.
Karen, where do you do your shopping these days? Whole Foods, Piggly Wiggly? Where do you go?
Safeway.
Safeway.
Raley's.
If you went into the Safeway or the Brailleys and you said to just the three people you saw at the produce area, what's going on this Friday? Do you think people would know?
No, and I think that's the sad thing. I mean, I think that goes to your question to my dad. You know, I'm old enough to remember when presidents of the major countries in the world met. That was a big deal. And we don't know whether to consider this a big deal or a joke. I mean, that's how far apart we are these days. And so I think it's, nobody's going to care, and nobody really knows. It's just that we won't be paying attention to some of the things that, like the starving in Gaza.
Rob, do you think that the president has the country unified around him, or is this a typical just red-blue divide and Democrats have no confidence in him, or aren't rooting for him?
No, I think it all falls to partisan grounds these days. So I think he's playing to his base, who, frankly, is probably a little disoriented given the heavy interventionism that he's exhibited over the past few months. This was something he promised to solve on day one to end the war in Ukraine. And I think they are wondering when he's going to get around to doing that. I think there's some stakes here for Trump at some point if he can't bring this to a conclusion. And of course, then on the heels of the controversies of the last couple of weeks in MAGA world, it's interesting. Are we finally seeing some of these issues where he's could show some cracks with his base?
All right, let's switch to the president's big announcement today on DC. And of course, Californians are quite familiar with the president's use of military force on civilian streets to deal with matters not normally dealt with by the military. Number 5, please. This ABC News headline: Trump puts DC police under federal control, calls in the National Guard. So this involves basically 3 parts: National Guard, potential use of the military, as well as, because DC is under this home rule law, the commanding of the DC police force. And here's how the president explained this today, calling it Liberation Day for Washington, number 6.
I'm announcing a historic action to rescue our nation's capital from crime, bloodshed, bedlam, and squalor, and worse. This is Liberation Day in D.C., and we're going to take our capital back. We're taking it back. Under the authorities vested in me as the President of the United States, I'm officially invoking Section 740 of the District of Columbia Home Rule Act. You know what that is? And placing the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department under direct federal control, and you'll be meeting the people that will be directly involved with that. Very good people, but they're tough, and they know what's happening, and they've done it before. In addition, I'm deploying the National Guard to help reestablish law, order, and public safety in Washington, D.C., and they're going to be allowed to do their job properly.
incredible spectacle. The cabinet arrayed behind him. You saw there the Attorney General and the Secretary of Defense, but there were several other senior officials, other cabinet members there. Reaction from Democrats, as you might expect. The president also wants to use these forces to remove homeless encampments from parks in D.C. The mayor of Washington, D.C., Muriel Bowser, who's worked very hard to have a good relationship with the president, she called this unsettling. And here she is defending the crime situation in the district. Number 9, please.
It's also true that we experienced a crime spike post-COVID, but we worked quickly to put laws in place and tactics that got violent offenders off our streets and gave our police officers more tools, which is why we have seen a huge decrease in crime because of those efforts. We have been able to reverse that 2023 crime spike. This year, crime isn't just down from 2023, it's also down from 2019, before the pandemic, and we're at a 30-year violent crime low. We're not satisfied. We haven't taken our foot off the gas, and we continue to look for ways to make our city safer.
So, Karen, let's just talk about the pure politics of this. Whatever the president's motive, and there's no doubt in my mind, just from having talked to him about urban stuff for a while, he doesn't like crime in D.C., and he thinks the nation's capital shouldn't have homeless encampments. But there's no doubt that Republicans think, every Republican I heard from today thinks this is great politics for them. What's the right way for Democrats to respond to this?
Well, first, can I say my dad had a really funny line earlier when we were talking about this, and I just want to say what it is, which is
Sure.
Trump said, "We've been overtaken by violent gangs and bloodthirsty criminals, roving mobs of violent youth, drugged out maniacs, and homeless people." And my dad said, "Well, so he just threw out the lobbyists. Now what?"
That's good.
So anyway, look, I mean, again, just like the question about whether the summit's important or not, or serious or not, you want to laugh at this, but it's serious stuff. We saw this in Los Angeles when the armed guards were there with masks on, and people were, grandparents were afraid to go to their children's graduation ceremonies. People were afraid to go shopping. Families were afraid to come out of their house. Here we are in Washington, D.C. I mean, I just lived there for 3.5 years in the Biden administration. I didn't see any of this. This wasn't happening. This is not reality. And so we need to call him on it. This is not happening. And for people to stand by and say, oh my God, that poor young staffer was carjacked and that was a serious crime. But today somebody got an offender bender and 22 National Guard troops ran to the car. This is not okay. And the money that goes for this is being taken away from other things. And I think that we need to be very clear about what reality is and what it's not. And what he's doing right now is an expensive decoy away from wars that he hasn't ended, children that he is in part responsible for going hungry and dying. And I think the Democrats cannot let their foot off the pedal on it.
Jordan, there are a few people in your Democratic Party who are as articulate and as impassioned as your daughter, but is it possible that Donald Trump's luring the Democratic Party into a trap on this?
No, I don't think so. I mean, step back a bit. The National Guard in LA didn't do anything. It sat around, well, they slept on top of each other practically. They didn't even have any bunks for a long time. They stood around on the streets. They weren't really allowed to do any police work. I don't know what they're going to do in D.C. I mean, they're not cops. They're not trained to be cops. And again, it's just Trump getting publicity for something, getting attention. So a waste of money is just distraction and it's too much like some dictatorship in some banana country.
All right, here's California Representative Maxine Waters reacting to what the president announced. Number 11, please.
To mean nothing. Actions mean everything. Watch this. Watch it very closely. Ask a lot of questions. Focus those cameras on everything that's going on, because this president is trying to lead us into what could be called a civil war.
Rob, I've been struck all summer by stories that seem like they're going to last for a good long time, and for whatever reason they cycle away. Is this something we're going to be talking about in a week?
Maybe in a week, depending on what happens and what it really looks like to have guardsmen on the street of DC. I mean, it could be rather unsettling and keep tourists away. It all depends how they do it. But is anyone talking about the guard in LA anymore? No, they've gone home. The Marines have gone home. This is all Trump's all about the splash of the announcement. The optics are great. Maxine Waters is said exactly what the White House would hope by overstating what's going on here, declaring it a civil war. And so Trump gets his bump. But it'll be interesting to see, well, how does this play out? So what is going on with crime in 60 days? And where do those homeless people go if they're going to go sweep the camps? I mean, it was easy to go into LA and put down really some small skirmishes in the streets of LA. Actually, they didn't even get involved in it. Very different if you're going to take responsibility for policing a major city. There's a little bit now he'll own it here a little bit going forward. It'll be interesting to see what this looks like in 90 days, 120 days for the administration.
Let's see if they police the whole city or just the tourist areas and where rich people live. I'm super curious about that, because some indications I have are that's where the focus is. All right. Again, if you want to be in on the conversation, please raise your hand. A couple other headlines, and then I want to talk about some California stuff with our California experts. The president, as was advertised in the Wall Street Journal today, number 14, met with the head of Intel, the CEO, who he called to have fired. But after their meeting, he said the guy's got an amazing story and they're going to talk to the cabinet about it. So we'll see. We'll see if the president continues to try to get him fired. And then we were at the deadline for the expiration of the deal between the Chinese and the United States on trade. The president extended that deal today. This is number 15, extended that deal 90 more days. So negotiations will continue. And again, we continue to believe we're headed towards a Trump-Xi summit later in the year, and the 90 days could take us through that. And then finally, a second federal judge, number 16, in New York, following on a judge in Florida, said that he didn't see any reason to unseal the Maxwell grand jury testimony. And he said, having read it all, he said there's nothing new here. So if the notion is we're trying to balance the normal barrier to releasing grand jury testimony with the public's right to know, he said there's nothing here that the public has a right to know, because there's nothing here. All right, let's talk about California. I remain confused by your governors being so far out there on redistricting, because it'll take an enormous effort to make the changes necessary to do redistricting. And that's like step one. If he somehow gets that done towards a process which might not work, might not produce additional Democratic seats. Here is Governor Newsom talking yet again, number 4, about Governor Abbott of Texas and about gerrymandering. Number 4.
Hey, President Trump, it's time to stand down. It's time to make another phone call to Greg Abbott. This time, instead of calling him and telling him you're quote unquote entitled to 5 congressional seats, it's time to tell him to stand down. It's time to recognize that democracy is at risk. It's time to, dare I say, do the right thing. Actually see how that feels for you, doing the right thing. If you don't, California will neutralize anything you do in the state of Texas. California will continue to punch above its weight. We believe in democracy. We believe in the enduring values of our founding fathers. 249 years. We're not going to sit back passively. We're not going to sit back and watch you light democracy on fire. We will fight fire with fire.
Texans love their guacamole. California actually has better avocados, but fierce competition, not just in terms of guacamole, but also this redistricting thing. Governor Abbott has a different point of view. Here's Governor Abbott on Fox today on the same matter. 3D.
This on next. Donald Trump, if you will not stand down, California will be forced to lead an effort to redraw our maps to offset the rigging of maps in red states. If the other states call off their redistricting efforts, we will do the same, and American democracy will be the better for it. But as you pointed out yesterday, and you pointed out there with the state of New York, the process in Texas is much different than it is in California. You can't just willy-nilly rewrite things in the Golden State.
So for one, the process is different because we have the authority to pass laws to do this, whereas in both California and New York, it requires a constitutional amendment. But for another, listen, both New York and California are so gerrymandered, they don't have any more seats that can be picked up. But I'll tell you this, if California thinks they're going to move their needle to the extreme and eliminate 5 Republican members of the United States Congress there, Texas is not going to do 5. We'll add 10 more Republican seats using the same procedure they're using in California. We have more Democrat seats that can turn into Republican seats than they have Republican seats in California that they can turn into Democrat seats.
Okay.
George, can you explain what Governor Newsom is up to on this?
Well, yeah, I mean, Texas is going to cheat. Well, then California is going to cheat too. I mean, that's, Texas is going to pick up 5 Republican seats. California is going to pick up 5 Democratic seats. That's what it's up to.
Do you think they can, though? Do you think if Governor Newsom really pursues this aggressively, he can actually get 5 additional Democratic seats?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the Democratic registration in this state is 2-1 over Republicans. Trump is not the most popular guy in California for sure. And if Newsom plays it smart and spends his money correctly, this will be about Trump cementing control over the single pants in the House for the final 2 years of his term, and he'll sell Californians on redistricting.
Rob, are you bullish on Governor Newsom's ability to get this done?
No, I'm not. I'm bearish on it. So, Abbott alluded to the constitutional amendment that's necessary. So just brief some history on this. My old boss, Governor Schwarzenegger, pushed through a ballot measure, an amendment to the Constitution that created an independent redistricting committee, a commission that does the redrawing every 10 years of state house and of the congressional maps. You can debate how good these maps are, but they're not gerrymandered. That's inaccurate when Abbott says that. They are done by this commission made up equally of independents, Republicans, and Democrats. So what has to be undone in California isn't just doing this map in order to balance Texas. You have to tear down this really substantial political reform that was approved by the voters of California. Now, Newsom's going to do it temporarily. He says this is just through the decade. Then the commission comes back in the 30s and redraws districts again when California loses 4 to 5 seats, probably, incidentally. But this thing's going to play out with probably my old boss, Schwarzenegger, weighing in vociferously against it. I think there'll be hundreds of millions of dollars possibly spent on each side of this to try to get it to pass. And I agree, George is right about the Democrat majority here, and Trump isn't popular, but I don't think that is the pure frame of how this is going to end up going down. I mean, just wait till they show some of the shapes of what these districts are going to look like, running from the sea to the border of Nevada, winding all through Northern California to get rid of Doug LaMalfa at a plus 23 Trump seat. So I'm skeptical. And one last point on this is Newsom suffers in California with voters every time he starts out on his national political ambitions. This is all about his national political ambitions. I think that's what voters are going to see, and I think it's a tough thing to get past.
Aaron, I usually, when I estimate how much will be spent on a California ballot initiative, I'm usually off by a factor of several hundred or scores of millions. Do you agree with Rob that much money will be spent if this goes forward, and who will spend on both sides?
I can tell you if what's blowing up my phone these days is any indication, there's going to be hundreds of millions of dollars spent on this. It's quick, and there's not a consultant in the initiative and referendum industry that's not begging right now to be hired for it. And I would just say I want to make another different point than Rob and my dad made about this. I think that there is a red bloom in this blue state. If you look at the elections, the presidential elections from 12, 16, 20, 24, the 2024 election saw almost 75% of the counties in the state become more red than they were in 2016. And in 2020, there was 20% more red. The state is becoming more red. And as that happened, some really big blue counties flipped in the Central Valley, in Riverside, in the San Joaquin Vally. And so it will be very hard to find five Republican seats to turn. I would say if I were betting, I'd say we can harden some Democratic seats, gray and harder, and maybe we can flip a couple Republican seats, but it will be very hard to find five new seats in this because, as Rob said, Schwarzenegger and the commission did such a good job of establishing them, in a very non-political way early on. So I think it's going to come down to turnout. And I think, in a November 4th election in an off year, you can't count on a lot of turnout. So the money's going to have to be on the street, and that's going to be really expensive.
But who will put up the money on the anti-side? Schwarzenegger?
So there's a Charles Munger Jr., the son of the famous Charlie Munger, funded the measure with Schwarzenegger the first time. Munger has stepped forward, says he will fund an opposition to protect his baby, so to speak. But then I think it's unlimited contribution limits. So you'll see money flow in from national moneyed interests on each side of the aisle. So think of just a classic labor, tech, business showdown on this measure.
Yeah. All right. Let's do a few more California things, then we'll take questions from the community. You mentioned Governor Newsom's national ambitions. Let's polymarket this. Polymarket traders put 19% odds that Governor Newsom is the nominee, which is the highest of anybody. You can put up, which one would that be? 4C. He's at 19, AOC 15, Pete Buttigieg 12, Bashir 6.3. So that hasn't changed much over time. I don't think he's running, and you guys will probably laugh at me, but I don't think his family wants him to run, and I think in the end he won't run. George, is your governor going to run for president?
I think he's running
Yeah.
right now. I mean, why else would he go to South Carolina in July? I mean,
Great food.
yeah. No, he's definitely running.
Definitely
How far
running.
he runs, we don't know. He may not make it very far, but
Do you think the Democrats in California will be supportive of him in general if he runs?
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
They'd be
Karen,
supportive. They'd be supportive of any Democrat that ran.
Karen, I don't think he's running. Tell me why I'm wrong.
Because trans athletes, CEQA reform, giving a pass to refineries. I think he's moving to the center on a lot of policies in California. He loves politics. He loves to be out there. He likes people. He's, like my dad said, he went to South Carolina, and I think he's running.
You think he's the front runner, Karen?
No, I don't. And I don't think
who's the front runner?
Someone we don't know yet. Just like the governor's race in California, someone we don't know yet.
We'll do that next. Rob, is he running?
I think he's running. He's shown all the indications he's running. He's always had that ambition. Since I've seen him as the mayor of San Francisco, I thought this could be a future president. So yes, I think he's running. It's taken him a while since the election to figure out a theme to how he wants to do it. And then Trump really kind of gifted him the opportunity with the ICE actions in Southern California and taking his National Guard troops. It gave Newsom the ability to authentically resist. not in a trumped up way, pun intended, but really had something to resist on against Trump. And he's there's been a party nationally looking for someone to be able to do that. So I think that's why he may be leading those poly markets at the moment and his name ID. I agree with Karen. I don't know if he's not the front runner, but I would certainly bet heavily on the field.
Yeah. Do you guys think he'll be a formidable fundraiser if he runs?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
California is a great.
All three small dollar grassroots bundling and super PAC, all three, Karen?
All. I
Yeah.
mean, one of the things that is, I think, to a Newsom advantage right now is just how Kamala is in the market, how she
Yeah.
has settled in the market. And
Yeah.
with that, a little bit of a lackluster settling, at least for now, he inherits the wealth in this state, and they're like brother and sister in a lot of ways. And so much money, as you know, comes from San Francisco and LA. And I think that, he's the heir apparent for all of that right now.
All right, two questions, a quick round robin here on the governor's race. Of all the Democrats who are either running or likely to run, the Democrats running or likely to run, who's the strongest, most likely to win the governorship now? Karen?
You did, first of all, it's a trick question because you cannot answer that question at the moment. I would say, it's going to be a very, very expensive race. So you've got to look at who can raise the money. Javier Becerra just raised the most money in the last quarter, and most people haven't heard of him. I mean, it's a really quirky race right now. I would say you're gonna put Katie Porter in the top tier, and she's gonna fall out of that. And I think Javier and somebody like Tony Atkins might stay in for a while. Of those you said who are in it at the moment.
Right. So, Rob or George, do either of you see any Democrats sort of the strongest, or do you agree with Karen that it's too jumbled right now?
I don't think the race has really begun. We can't tell. It depends who raises the money. I mean,
Yeah.
just off the top of my head, I think the conventional wisdom is Katie Porter, Javier Becerra, Antonio Villaraigosa. Those three, they don't. They've probably got good shots as anybody right now.
Karen, who did Becerra raise his money from?
Tribes.
Interesting. Okay, what's the name of that? I can never remember the guy's name. What's the name of that guy who owns the mall in
Rick Caruso.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Rick Caruso. Do you guys take him seriously if he runs for governor? Is he a strong candidate?
Well, I'll chime in and say yes, because if he runs, he'll be the guy I'll be supporting.
We would be working for him or just supporting him?
Well, to be seen, but certainly at least
Okay.
supporting.
And how big a check can he write?
Well, he wrote about $105 million to run for mayor of LA and lost. But I don't think he'd have to write the check. I think he could raise money. I think there are people calling Rick, encouraging him to run that can write some pretty big checks on their own. And now especially with Harris declining to run, I've never seen a field for governor like this with such a huge vacuum in it. So the tractor beam is on for Rick and I think for others. I keep trying to bait Bill Maher into returning my call to discuss it. So,
George Skelton, would Caruso be a strong candidate for governor if he ran?
Well, I think he'd be up near the top. I don't think he'd be a particularly strong candidate. California doesn't have a very good record of electing people who've never held elected office. Schwarzenegger, Reagan, yes, but they were household names before they ever ran, and they'd been involved. Both of them have been involved in politics a bit. But Caruso, like Rod mentioned, I mean, he spent $100 million trying to become mayor of LA and got beat by Karen Bass. So, and the Bay Area is much more liberal actually than LA is. So, I don't know. Will Democrats accept Caruso as a Democrat? He's registered that way. He used to be a Republican. And I think he can raise a lot of money, though. He can raise money from the business community.
Karen, if he ran, would he be strongest running as a Republican, a Democrat, or an independent?
If I were advising him, I'd say run as a decline to state. And if you added that to a good significant number of Democrats and some Republicans, you could win the state.
Hey, Mark, I want to remind your viewers it is a top 2 runoff. So when we talk about Caruso, it's possibly a D versus D runoff. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, everybody runs on the ballot in the primary, and the top 2 vote getters, regardless of party, are in the general election, and it makes gaming it out a little complicated. All right. Lastly, I'm hoping all 3 of you have an answer for this one. If you could convince someone from Silicon Valley, not a politician, but a Silicon Valley business person, to run, and you wanted them to both win and be a good governor, so they have to have a good chance to win, and if they win, govern well, who would you try to coax into the race? Rob, you start with you, because your party's the one constantly thinking about that.
Yeah, my trick answer to that is it technically is from Silicon Valley, but not necessarily from tech, like what you were searching for. That would be the up-and-coming mayor of San Jose, Matt Mahan.
Okay, and he's a Republican?
No, he's a Democrat.
He's a Democrat. So you'd encourage a Democrat to be governor?
I'm a realist. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. George, is there someone in Silicon Valley who you think could run and win and govern well?
No.
No. Karen?
I mean, I would go for somebody at a venture firm that's like a managing part. I'd go for someone like John Hennessy, kind of a statesman, former Stanford. I think he, is moderate at best. Yeah, I could support somebody like that. Good businessman. Look, I think the current mayor of San Francisco, even though he's a Democrat, I think some Republicans can take pages out of his book. Crime has gone way down. He's doing a lot for homelessness. He's got huge business relationships and partnerships across the aisles and in Silicon Valley. And I like him a lot too.
Okay. Interesting choices. All right. I'm bringing community folks in again. Apologize for getting to you late and apologize for the technical difficulties I had. Jack, welcome in, unmute. Tell folks who don't know where you are, what's on your mind for George, Karen, and Rob, please.
Well, I'm in San Antonio. In fact, I'm a voter in one of the to-be gerrymandered districts. And I think it's not necessarily a given that the Republicans would succeed in this. I know I've been a lifelong Republican since I was a Massachusetts voter voting for Richard Nixon in 1968. And I know I voted for Henry Cuellar, even though he's ethically challenged, because the Republicans that they're putting up, they are just a bunch of Ken Paxton wannabes, which is about as odious a group of politicians as you'd ever want to see. And I don't necessarily think in a state that is not as quite as red as they would like to think that you'd have somebody like that. That would be the great success they're hoping for.
Okay, Jack, thank you. Folks' view on whether the Texas redistricting might also be a misguided, as we said potentially about California.
Absolutely.
Karen or Rob or George, any view on that?
I'll jump in. I think it's misguided. I think Texas has the perfect right to do it. I mean, they're not doing it in Illinois because they already gerrymandered Illinois on the Democrat side. So Texas has a right to do it, but I think it looks ugly. And I think it's bad politics for the Republicans, looking like they'll go to these play dirty tactics to hold the House instead of running on a policy agenda.
Jack, thank you. Rebecca, welcome, and tell folks who don't know where you are, what's on your mind for our Golden State trio.
I'm here in Texas too. Out here, I was wanting for 2026 in this situation. I know nobody really likes him, but do y'all think what he's doing now, like in Washington and things like that's going to play a role in the House and getting seats and stuff like that in 2026?
Rebecca, we missed who you were talking about. Did you say Ted Cruz or somebody else?
No, I would say in 2026, like what Donald Trump is doing right now, like with Washington, D.C., bringing in all that. Do y'all think that's going to play a role with our getting elected for the House?
Got it. Okay. How much do you think the police action in DC will be a midterm issue? Karen?
None.
None.
I mean, I think that's the magic of Donald Trump. I mean, he's just who cares if there are true, I mean, unless you're on vacation there, people don't care what politicians think or members to people of the Washington establishment if they're upset about the guard walking down the street. I mean, I just think he's got us up against our backs a little bit on that one.
Okay. Rob or George, you think it'll be a midterm issue?
No.
George?
Yeah, I think good. I'll be contrarian here. Say that, it's like the straws on the camel's back. One of these times, of course, I've been saying this now for 8 years, but it's going to catch up with Trump. It's not going to catch up with his base, but I think sending in armed troops as a police force doesn't help any politician, and I think sooner or later it's all going to catch up with him, and it might be next year to midterms.
Okay. We'll see. Dean, welcome in from Ohio. Question for Rob and Karen and George.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I'm fascinated with California, and especially to Karen and George. Thank you for coming in. It's easy to see your passion come through. I'm curious, Karen, you mentioned, this is for everyone. There's really two questions I have. Red blooms in California, that was fascinating to me. I was shocked to hear you say that. I'm curious why you might believe that California is turning a shade of red. And second, I still remain puzzled if we talk specifically about border security. It's obviously one that President Trump, I guess you could say, promise made, promise kept. I'm just curious why that has been such a divisive issue for the Democrats. Why couldn't the Democrats get together and secure the border? Thank you.
Okay, two great questions. Karen, on the first one, I'd love to know, where are those red voters coming from? Are they new voters? Are they people switching parties out of state? Where's the red bloom coming from?
A lot of it is coming from Latinos and coming from Democrats moving to decline to state and then decline to state to Republicans. And they're coming geographically from big counties like Riverside County and San Bernardino County, Orange County, and then in the Central Valley, Fresno, Merced, Stanislaus, San Joaquin, all of those counties became more red between 16 and 20 and between 20 and 24. Only one county in California, Alpine County, was the vote in 2024 for Harris more than it was for Biden in 2020. Only one county.
And Karen, do we know, is it being driven by Trump or issues? What's driving?
I don't know, but I would, and maybe Rob or my dad knows this more. I think the Latino vote is very much misunderstood in this state. I think people think that the Latino vote is going to be driven by immigration policy, and I don't think it is. I think it's driven by education, the big education divide. The more educated you are, the more likely you're going to be a Democrat, and the less educated you are. This is in the country, and it is also the case in California.
Affordability is driving a lot of it. I like to say there's working class voters in California are moving to the right, and they happen to be, most of those voters are Latino. So the Latino, to me, I think we're seeing, it's really to be interpreted as a secondary factor. It's working class on affordability issues.
George, on immigration, I call it the Biden-Harris, Karen Skelton administration. I heard from Democratic politicians in California for the first 2 years saying, we're telling the White House constantly, you got to shut the border down. You don't understand how damaging politically this is. Those politicians saw it. What's your sense in response to Dean's question? Why can't the Democratic Party move in that direction towards being more openly supportive of border security?
Well, I'm not here to defend the Democratic Party, believe me, but
I'm just asking about the politics of the party. There's obviously some countervailing issues.
Yeah. Well, we must remember that there's a bipartisan agreement on immigration reform during the Biden administration that Trump killed because he wanted to run on it in the general election. And if they would have, Democrats did have a plan, and many Republicans agreed with it, and they could have passed it if Trump hadn't killed it. Start with that, but you're right. The Democrats went too far to the left on immigration. Sanctuary cities, sanctuary state, went too far. And California, historically, and still is in many regards, a moderate state. Republicans just collapsed in this state. And and also the demographics. We can talk about Latinos moving to the right, but it's almost irrelevant because they don't vote in their numbers. They vote way down percentage-wise, and whites still make up about 60 to 70% of the vote in California, and they vote for the most part moderate. But I disagree with my daughter about California kind of turning to the right. I think the Democrats just had lousy presidential candidate last time, Harris. She got something like 2 million less votes than Biden did. Trump got a little bit, about 75,000 votes more than he did in 20. But Harris got 2 million votes less than Biden did. That's Democrats not voting.
Dean, thank you. All right, last question for you three. What's the most? Yeah, go ahead, George.
Well, meanwhile, the Democrats picked up 3 congressional seats.
Right.
Last time.
Right.
So, we voted for a anti-crime measure, but that's typical California. Right. We're going to do that.
Last question for all three of you. What's the most undercovered story in California? It can be culture, politics, science, music, weather, whatever you want. What's the most undercovered story in California? Rob.
Karen alluded to it earlier. I think Mayor Lurie in San Francisco and the turnaround is underway.
Yep. Karen?
How beautiful the sun is when you're walking on the Yolo Causeway, and you can see it both from the east rising and over the Sonoma Napa Valley to the west.
George?
Southern California beaches by far.
The correct answer is Otani. Most undercovered story. Most undercovered.
I live with that consciously every hour, so I didn't go for the undercovered.
Most undercovered. Thank you all. The plan is to have the three of them back. California is always a big story. As you know, 1 in every 5 Americans, or 1 in every 7 Americans lives in California, 5th largest economy in the world, and at least 4th now. 4th. Okay. It moves back and forth. And at least 1 presidential candidate. Rokana. Thank you 3 for being here. We look forward to having you back. Apologize to everybody. I haven't had technical difficulties like that in months and months and months. Not sure what happened, but we'll play the roulette again tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern time on the morning meeting. Thanks to the community for being here. And again, thanks to the Skeltons and Rob. We'll see you all soon, and I'll see you at 9 a.m. tomorrow.
Mark.
Have a good night.
Good to see you.
Thank you.